So many people, especially in recent years, have grown sick of the sat-nav or GPS-style navigation systems of open-world games. A good example would be one of my favourites, The Witcher 3, with its dotted line, quest information and minimap that all serve to drag your attention away from the beautiful open world that CD Projekt Red crafted. Although the harm of minimaps might not be immediately obvious, I would argue that it's genuinely pernicious. Open world games are supposed to be enjoyed. You want to become enthralled and immersed, and frankly, I didn't buy a 50-inch flat screen TV to look at a tiny little circle in the top right hand corner. Some games, in one way or another, have managed to mitigate this problem. A decent example, in my opinion, is Metro Exodus. With its physical in-game map, you're certainly not taken out of the experience, but it does still break up gameplay from time to time. Other games allow you to just turn off the minimap altogether, but I'm often left feeling like they weren't designed for you to play this way, and exploration can become a real slog of constantly pausing to see that larger map. Well, this is where Ghost of Tsushima comes in, because I think it solves the minimap problem. Hi, I'm Cameron and this is Discussing Games, and in this episode of Worth Discussing, I'm going to analyse the guiding wind mechanic in Ghost of Tsushima. The guiding wind is pretty simple. You swipe up on the DualShock's touchpad and the wind blows in the direction of your waypoint. That may be a main or side quest, a pin on the map, or later on in the game it can be used to locate various side activities within your vicinity, such as shrines, hot springs and bamboo strikes. The actual idea of the guiding wind was an artistic goal of the creators from the very beginning of the game. Speaking in an interview, the game's creator detailed the inspiration, stating that if you look at these early Chanbara samurai films, one of the key parts of the cinematography is movement, such as clouds of dust that whip up around two warriors, leaves blowing around a tragic figure, or billowing smoke on the battlefield. This was the art direction that they chose from the outset, and once this design element, namely the wind, had been implemented, the team then realised it could also be used as a means to guide the player, figuring that it worked already in a way that was thematic, and surprisingly enough, within a week it was almost flawless. On top of this, in the real story of the Mongol invasion of Japan, it is said that during the Mongols' return trip following their first failed invasion, a typhoon, or kamikaze, literally meaning divine wind, destroyed much of their fleet. In Ghost of Tsushima, Jin is the personification of that real piece of history. He isn't a hurricane, he's a man, and the directors acknowledge that change with his storm wind engraved katana. Despite somewhat of a historical foundation though, Ghost of Tsushima does take many historical liberties to lean into the more fun samurai tropes. For example, Jin's choice of weapon, the katana, was likely not even invented until at least 100 years after the events of Ghost of Tsushima. Thus, the Guiding Wind's creation was a process of art design choices and the taking of historical liberties, naturally evolving into the game's central navigation mechanic. Now, in terms of game design, the most basic benefit of the Guiding Wind is that it unclogs the user interface and allows the game to be much more cinematic. Time and again we've been provided with beautiful open worlds, only to find ourselves never actually looking at those stunning vistas, imposing landmarks, and appreciating the effort that went into crafting these worlds. However, the Guiding Wind only points you in a direction. You can remind yourself of it as little or as often as you want, but even when you do so, you'll still be looking at the game world and not fixated on only one small part of your screen, the minimap. As well as that, the wind is a straight line, as opposed to a bending GPS type waypoint that we've seen before. This ensures that the player does not have to follow the road and is instead encouraged to venture out into the stunning wilderness of the game without fear of going too far off the beaten track. This leads to the discovery of places of interest that, with an alternative style of navigation, may have been completely ignored. The game provides that much greater level of autonomy that is so satisfying. You're encouraged to forge your own path, and doing so makes exploration something that is active instead of the passive approach that we've all grown so tired of. On top of that, wind is omnipresent within the game. Depending on your waypoint, trees will sway in that direction, pampas grass will blow like stroking a soft blanket, and amazingly, even Jin's cape will glue to his body when you ride in the direction of the guiding wind and will blow behind him when you do not. All of these provide a constant reminder of the direction that you're supposed to be travelling in, and that's even without using the DualShock's touchpad. If you pay attention, the game world is speaking to you. This is the kind of thing where, when you notice it, you can't help but just stand back and applaud the amount of thought that must have gone into making the game the way that it is. But not only that, it also shows that the game systems are working together, and that Ghost of Tsushima is greater than the sum of its parts. Beyond merely the wind, as a whole, the approach to exploration in Ghost of Tsushima is very organic. For example, side quests and in-game activities are dished out by rescued prisoners who inform you of the camp nearby as the source of their Mongol captors. NPCs in town will give you quests and general advice about exploring the game world, a useful reminder for players who don't have the ability to play the game non-stop and may have forgotten some of the systems. And following the theme of spiritualism, foxes lead you to shrines and golden birds guide you to points of interest. On top of that, exploration is coherent with the aims of Jin's character. We don't have any of those problems of the pretentiously named ludonarrative dissonance, meaning where the gameplay does not meet with the character's aims. Jin is seeking to rid the island of Mongols, so it makes sense that he should go from camp to camp slaughtering his enemies. But also that he would spend the time seeking out shrines, bamboo strikes and other upgrades to increase his chances of defeating them. In a way, it's very similar to Breath of the Wild, which sets your chief aim as defeating Ganon. You know that in order to succeed, you need to be as strong as possible, and so your exploration is vindicated. Really then, Ghost of Tsushima is all about trying to make the player feel at one with the game world, making it all make sense and making it feel immersive. The game's open world is a living, breathing thing, not just some big sandbox that we can all run around in. Ghost of Tsushima is one of those open worlds where it just feels great to exist in it. Not many games manage to achieve that level of beauty where I'm happy to just walk around in the open world taking in the scenery. Other games like The Witcher 3, Red Dead 2 and Breath of the Wild all do it too, but not to the extent that this game manages. There are no distractions, barring the occasional combat encounter, that take away from the breath of fresh air that the island of Tsushima, with its rolling hills, flowing pampas grass and swaying trees, truly is. The game is a delightful swan song for the PlayStation 4, and Sucker Punch are now decisively on my list of studios to keep a keen eye on for the PS5. Thank you very much for watching my latest episode of Worth Discussing, and I hope that you enjoyed it. First up, I'd like to thank my patrons, whose constant support genuinely means a lot to me, and if you enjoy my content and want it to continue, then becoming a patron would really help me out and allow me to continue making these videos, certainly more sustainably. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please feel free to subscribe and let me know below. So, until next time, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all later.